Welcome in, everybody, a Football Friday edition of Birds 365 here as we prepare for a weekend of football, but the Eagles will not play until Monday. So we still will have another Birds 365 to go before the Philadelphia Eagles kick off their Week 2 game. Johnny Mac, Football Friday, my man. Happy Football Friday to you. How you doing on this Friday morning?
Yeah, I wish we had a game Sunday, but we got the crazy schedules for a couple more weeks, so we'll get through it. Monday Night Football, week 2. It's always Kirk Cousins in week 2 for this team.
It does seem to be the trend. I don't know how. Has it been 3 years now?
This is the third consecutive year.
Yeah. And then I think they destroyed them both of the last 2 years, didn't they?
Yeah, they destroyed them 2 years ago. Last year they got the big lead, and Minnesota got a bunch of whatever garbage yardage, whatever. But
I remember the 2 years ago game crystal clear. They thrashed them.
2 years ago they killed them. Last year it was more of
that was kind of Jalen Hurts' not coming out party, but after the 9-7 season or the
it was they basically dared Jalen Hurts to beat him, and they killed him. And that was Ed Donatel, Vic Fangio scheme Vikings that were one of the worst defenses I ever saw in my life. So, and then they shifted last year, as they had to Brian Flores, which is much better, but they just don't have much talent on defense.
Yeah, no doubt. So we'll preview the game. In hour number 2, we have an exciting guest, Thomas Mott, who's been absolutely crushing it on YouTube. He had 100,000 plus views on his live stream of the game in week 1. So great stuff from Thomas Mott. He'll join us in hour number 2. Looking forward to talking to him, and we will get into the breakdown of this game offensively and defensively here in hour number 1. Johnny Mac, before I do that, we'll get into the Eagles news. Yesterday, a couple players spoke, and then there was some practice squad moving. Yesterday on the show, I said, Jack Stoll, he's gone. The show ends and Jack Stoll is back.
Yeah, he never left. He never
what
left.
Did the practice squad? What happened with the practice squad yesterday for the
they're doing some procedural stuff. Basically, we're moving guys in and off. Now Jack and Caden Stearns are a part of it because they've been banged up. So there's the ability to sort of get some other players paid for the week. The Kevin Folshes of the world. By the way they're doing it. So it's basically it's a procedural move. Jack's going to be here even when he's not here. Caden Stearns is going to be here even when he's not here. And, they're trying to do a solid for certain players, but by churning the back end and getting guys, Griffin Heber's another one of them. If they're on the practice squad, I believe Tuesday, I'm not sure about the day, then they're going to get paid for the week. So they generally do the churn and try to get some guys they're trying to take care of, an extra paycheck here and there. You can't do it every week because then you'd have a practice squad of 19 people, 20 people, whatever, but they're trying to rotate it as much as possible.
So in a way, they're kind of trying to be a good organization and get a couple extra guys, some more paychecks.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the point of what they're trying to build and why so many people, I'm not saying that's why, but there's a lot of people that want to play here.
Yeah.
And they generally do little things like that make people want to play here, which is a good thing.
I was thinking about the human element of it, John, where it's like you're on, you're off. It's like you're going to another team, you're coming back. It's got to be a little tough on these guys. I mean, they are humans at the end of the day. A lot of times we look at these players and we think they're, pieces on a chessboard. They are humans. They have real thoughts and feelings and everything. And, so I do think I wonder what the human element of it is, where you're just like,
the guys, the guys like Caden Stearns and Jack Stoll, like they're made aware of what's going on. So they're, and they're veteran players, and it's going to be made up to them on the back end, and the ability that they're not healthy right now. So you sort of build those relationships, and so they're well aware. Like Jack, I saw Jack yesterday. He never left. It's not like there was uncertainty. He knew what was going on. So, it's just a little procedural thing. Yeah. Try to get some extra guys some money.
Yeah, good stuff. Zeal says that's the job. You are right, Zeal. It is the job, but I do just, and try and be empathetic at least to the people and not just focus so much on the game. When I was young, my dad used to tell me, athletes are people who play games for a living. The people are important. The games are not. Now, Eagles fans might not want to hear that because the games are important to them, but the people are more important for sure. So,
Oh yeah, I tell everybody, like, the minute you tell me, I say, so many people go on social media and say certain insert player's name is made of glass or he gets hurt. I immediately, and I'm telling the people right now, I immediately mute you. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to. It's dumb. Um, you know, they're playing a sport that we all, if we were out there for one day, we'd probably never come back. So, people that say they're made of glass, yeah, I have no time for that. Similar, you saw what happened with Tua last night.
yeah.
Very dangerous game. Still, as much as they try to legislate it out, very dangerous game.
Yeah, what do you think is going to happen there? Let's go there before I was going to ask you about a couple of the press conferences from the Eagles yesterday. By the way, I want to welcome everybody in today. Thanks, everybody, for being in the chat. Our Birds 365 crew, Johnny Mac, has been crushing it on our show, baby. Everybody has been destroying it. The podcast numbers have been way up. So if you're listening on the podcast, we thank and we appreciate you. I hear you. I don't see it, but I hear you. So thank you for listening. And for those on YouTube as well, thank you guys for making this one of the best Eagles podcasts on YouTube and really all over the internet. So thanks, everybody, for being here this morning. I also want to thank BetUS for sponsoring the show today. This full show is brought to you by BetUS. We'll give you more about them later. But Johnny Mac, the Thursday night game last night, another concussion for Tua Tagovailoa. I'm a fan of Tua. I actually had several classes, John, when I was at Alabama with Tua.
Oh, is that class? This is breaking news.
Yeah, I had an entrepreneurship class with Tua and an English class with Tua, and this was before declared majors. It was in my sophomore year, so it wasn't anything. But he's really a great guy. I mean, I had one class with him that was 35 people. It wasn't like this humongous, room, and he's really a good person. I mean, I have limited interaction with him, but I'm a fan, obviously, because I'm a fan of Alabama football. But even taking off the Bama colored glasses, you feel for the player. It's 4 concussions now for him. What do you think of what's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly, and I think the concussion issue is very disingenuous. I talk about that all the time. I think it's such a there's not they're still in the very early stages of the research needed to explain the effects on certain people and how it differs from person to person and how multiple concussions increase issues, and still very early in all that research, and everybody makes grandiose claims, and the people and individuals are different how they handle it. Some people, they get one concussion and they're not able to recover. So you know I don't like the discussion around it, and you see so many people saying, "Well, he can never play again." Well, I'm going to leave that up to the doctors, but it is serious, obviously, from the standpoint of how many concussions he's had.
Yeah.
And from the Dolphins standpoint, there is that PR aspect of, like, they can't put him on the field even if he's cleared, because you're going to have this groundswell of people who think they're experts but not are experts. Oh, you can't put him back on the field. And that's what happened last time he went through this. So it's a very difficult situation. That's one of the things that complicated his contract, which he ultimately got. But the Dolphins knew these issues could rise up again, and you're talking about paying a guy $50 million. So number one, you hope he's okay from a personal standpoint. He's got to leave the game. He's got to leave the game. From a football standpoint, I never thought he was a $50 million quarterback. I'm not going to change that because he got hurt. But it's a very difficult situation from the Dolphins from a football perspective as well. But first and foremost, obviously, is his health.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So we'll see what ends up happening with there. I'll tell you what, Johnny Mac, about that coach, Mike McDaniel. Say what you want about him. You can like him, you can dislike him. I understand why players like playing for him, because whether he's right or he's wrong, or you agree with him or you disagree with him, he seems to really have his players' backs. Even with the Tyreek situation last week, with the Tua stuff, he's thinking of the human being, is what his comment was after the game. I see why players like playing for him, and I don't know what you guys think of the coach. I think he's a pretty good offensive mind, but
Well,
players
he's a
like
very
playing
good
for him.
offensive mind. I don't
Yeah,
think there's any question. As a head coach, the jury's still out.
yeah,
But yeah, players definitely like him.
yeah.
And
Well, he's
there's
got their back. He's always got their back.
yeah, and there's player. I mean, a perfect example was Vic Fangio. Vic wasn't a fit down there because Vic goes about things a little bit differently.
Yeah,
And I don't know if it's everybody calls it old school. Um, I prefer Vic's method. Uh, really, really than anyone's. Like I prefer honesty.
yeah,
Um, but there aren't a lot of Vic Fangios left. There's more Mike McDaniels.
yeah. No, you're
So
right.
um, he's a very good offensive coach. Is he going to be a good head coach? He's good. Is he going to be a great head coach? Is he going to be a long-term head coach? I mean, he's had them over 500 and in playoffs, I believe. Yeah, 2 consecutive years. So, he's 2 for 2. He's got him, but I don't look at that team. I kind of said it yesterday. I don't look at that team as a legitimate Super Bowl team. There's a toughness lacking. I said that on yesterday's show,
Yeah,
and you saw it show up. I mean, I picked Miami to win that game, and they got destroyed
yeah, they did.
by a Buffalo team that's a little bit in a rebuilding mode and's got a ton of injuries on defense, and they got destroyed. Um, so yeah, I think
Yeah,
it's
you want to beat Miami, be physical.
yeah, and does that stem from the top? Maybe, and they sure didn't like Vic, a bunch of them. And I haven't heard complaints about Vic here yet. Now, if you lose, everybody's going to complain, but they weren't losing last year. They were a good team, won 11 games. They weren't losing, and they still had a problem with tough coaching. So, yeah, I think not everybody, obviously. Andrew Van Ginkel didn't have a problem with it, for instance, but Jalen Ramsey, number of the D backs complained about it. So, yeah, I would say the jury's still out.
Yeah, we'll see what ends up happening with the Miami Dolphins, with Mike McDaniel and with Tua. Prayers up for Tua, that hopefully he is as healthy as he can be. You're thinking of the player first, as Johnny Mac mentioned. One more thought on last night's game, John. Josh Allen can play. I know we knew that, but I mean, he didn't even have his best game last night. But there's some plays that he makes that you're just like, holy cow, man! He is an unbelievable football player.
Yeah, if he could somehow temper the recklessness of his game with, which is very difficult to do. We see it with Jalen Hurts to a lesser degree all the time. But yeah, he's special. I mean, yeah, he can do things that nobody else can do. And but he turns it over. He's willing to take chances, and they haven't gotten over the top. So ultimately, he's in a similar situation as Lamar Jackson. It's not necessarily fair, but he's done everything you need to do in the regular season. Now it's about the playoffs. And by the way, even in the playoffs, it's not his fault that Sean McDermott can't navigate 13 seconds. And who knows, if they're in the Super Bowl, they might win the Super Bowl. That's not his fault. He had one of the great games that people still talk about. They changed rules because of that game.
That game is unbelievable.
And he did everything humanly possible to put the Bills over the top. So, yeah, he's proven everything he needs to prove to people in the industry. Like, everybody knows how good he is, but to the general public, until you get that Super Bowl, they're going to talk all that nonsense of You can't win the big game.
That game, John, that game was one of the game you're talking about, that playoff game versus Chiefs. That was one of the best games I think I've seen in the last 10 years. That game was
Yeah, sorry, it's arguably the best modern game.
Yeah. I mean, that game was unbelievable. Gabe
Yeah.
Davis had 4 touchdowns in that game. That game was unbelievable.
Yeah, and, that was on Sean McDermott, man. I mean, you can't handle that situation worse. I'm surprised he survived that, to be honest. And he's a good coach, but yeah, that was a disaster. Had nothing to do with Josh Allen.
Yeah, no. Let's move in, John, to the Eagles game. We got that Monday night game coming up. Week 2, everybody. Falcons are coming to Philly. Finally, our real home opener. Last week it was a home game, and we traveled 4,000 miles for a damn home game, giving away up our Lincoln Financial advantage that our stadium brings us with our incredible Eagles fans. But we are back home this week, and then we won't be home for about a month, Johnny Mac. They don't come home, I think, until October 13th or somewhere in there after the bye week. So they're going to want to take advantage of this one. We'll start with the offensive side of the ball for the Eagles, John, and their approach to this game. What if you're Kellen Moore, if you're Jalen Hurts coming into this game, what are you trying to do to dissect this Atlanta defense? They do have a couple good players. They got a defensive secondary. They got 2 great safeties. They do have a good cornerback as well. So they got some good players in the secondary. If you're attacking this Atlanta defense, what's your first couple priorities?
Well, I think the Eagles are looking internally this week, and by that I mean, and Nick Sirianni pointed this out yesterday. So send all the hate mail to Nick Sirianni today. Unsustainable is what he said. The turnovers.
Good to hear him say that.
Yeah. I mean, they were the only team in the NFL, if you heard him talk yesterday, that won losing the turnover rate. The only team in the NFL. And Jalen Hurts spoke after practice and said, took accountability, owned his 2 terrible decisions, should have owned 4 terrible decisions. Yeah, it wasn't good. And if you keep doing that, and Nick plainly said it, you're not going to win. So I think it's internal this week more than anything, clean operation, as Kellen Moore will say it, and Cam Jurgens and Jalen Hurts as well. Cleaner operation, and I think the rest takes care of itself. But yeah, Atlanta's got some talent on defense, and it starts with Grady Jarrett up front. And it's going to be interesting to see how they handle a player like that on a. You had a player like that on paper last week in Green Bay, but it didn't matter because of the field. So there's going to be good and bad. Now you can look at the Eagles defense and give them and judge them a little bit better. But now you have to look at, all right, Mekhi Becton, is he really a right guard? I think you'll get a better indication of that this week, because I think Atlanta will try to match up Grady Jarrett on him as much as possible. They got Matthew Judon late in the process. They've been looking for a pass rusher for a long time. They finally got one. They have good players at all 3 levels. Caden Ellis is one of the best linebackers in the NFL that people probably don't realize, brother of Christian Ellis. So he's on the second level. And then in the secondary, you mentioned people know Justin Simmons. Jesse Bates is arguably the best safety in football. He's the bigger deal. Jalen was talking about him a little bit.
Yeah, he's a great player.
Yeah, he's, people are talking about him as a game wrecker in the secondary, which you don't often hear about. So he's really good. Justin Simmons is a playmaker. AJ Terrell, Jalen mentioned him, very good cornerback, is back from an injury. So yeah, they got some talent. It'll be a test, but same thing from the Atlanta side. Raheem Morris was talking about it. So because of what went on last week, Raheem got the question about Saquon Barkley, and he immediately turned towards the entire encompassing of the playmakers and said, look, man, it's not just about stopping him. You got to worry about Slim Reaper, as he called him, which people do, Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, and that's a defensive-minded coach. And for as disappointing as week 1 was for The Falcons favorite over Pittsburgh with Justin Fields playing quarterback, and they weren't able to win the game. It was basically all offensive. The Steelers didn't score a touchdown. They had 6 field goals from Chris Boswell, and 3 of them were over 50 yards. So they did a good job defensively. And they have a good defense. And this will be a bigger test for strength versus strength, basically, because the Eagles should have a good offense. But if they turn it over like they did, they're in trouble this week. Or it's going to be like a tight Pittsburgh Atlanta game if the Atlanta offense can't get going at all, which is a possibility because Kirk Cousins doesn't seem healthy. But if they turn it over like they did against Green Bay, there's going to be some issues this week.
Yeah, 9 interceptions between those two safeties last year for the two players. They were on different teams, but they are ball hawks. John, is Atlanta running that Tampa 2 defense? That's what we talked about a little bit yesterday on the National Football Show. Is that what they're running?
No, Raheem's got a long history, but he was brought in to the Rams to do more of a Vic style defense. So he's multiple.
Okay, so he's going to have
he's got a history in Tampa too. He's got a history doing that. And they use the same base as the Eagles, so they'll do the whole 5-man, 4-man front, with Judon as the overhang player. With I think they're using Lorenzo Carter, so they probably aren't where they need to be with that second edge rusher, and then the 2 off-ball linebackers. So I would say he's got a history with both, but they lean more towards how Vic plays than classic Tampa 2. But they'll run it occasionally. But so will Vic.
Yeah. So the different looks on the defense. We'll see how Jalen Hurts and Kellen Moore try and carve them up. John, another good matchup from the standpoint going into this game is AJ Terrell on AJ Brown. Now they both got paid big money this offseason. AJ Terrell is a pretty damn good corner, but he did get picked on a little bit in week 1. He gave up, I think, 3 catches for 61 yards, missed a couple tackles. So we're going to see how he fares against AJ Brown. I know Kellen will move him around, and he probably won't be on AJ every play. But when you talk about CB1 and wide receiver 1, those are your top 2 guys. What do you think of the matchup between AJ Terrell, AJ Brown, and really just the whole Eagles wide receiving corps?
Well, I always like the Eagles' advantage because of AJ and Devontae as a tandem. They're very good, but they were. I'm just looking. Not that it's a very small sample size, but they were 5th in pass defense after week 1. Now a lot of that had to do with you're just playing a terrible quarterback, but
yeah.
So that factors into it as well. But they had a good week as far as it came to shutting down the passing game. You don't know how much is real. To me, it's not about AJ. It's about Mike Hughes and D. Alford, who's their slot corner. And are they going to be D. Alford? Can he match up with Devontae Smith in the slot? I don't think so. So yeah, I would say that's advantage. It's always you're going to have advantage Eagles, basically 17 for 17 with those 2.
Yeah, so we'll see what ends up happening there. That's a good matchup though with that. Just the whole secondary of the Falcons team is pretty good when you talk about those 2 safeties, Bates and Simmons. Then you have AJ Terrell. They got a lot of guys back there. It'll be interesting to see what Raheem does to try and throw some different looks to take away the Eagles playmakers. And then John, let's talk Saquon Barkley. What could he do in this game? I think he could be a big factor. That Atlanta D line. I mean, I know they have Grady Jarrett, who you've talked about extensively, but outside of that, they got Matthew Judon, right? Who's a great pass rusher. But could this be a Saquon day?
Well, I mean, Sure, it could be.
Any day could be, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's the beauty of the Eagles' offense at this stage, and that's what Kellen's talking about. All right, if you're going to try to take away, you almost need to be in the head of Raheem Morris. What is he going to try to take away? Because you can't take away everything, and you're basically saying, all right, make this guy beat me rather than this guy beat me. Is basically what you're trying to do. And it would be just speculation. But when he was asked, because Saquon's offensive player of the week, the 3 touchdowns. So when he was asked specifically about him, he specifically went to Devontae and AJ first. I don't know if that's a hint, but it might be. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, and if
I think the Falcons match up. I agree that they're the better, that they're who you have to take away first, and it's a tall task to do that for anybody, no matter how good your secondary is. But I do think the Atlanta defense matches up a little better with the wide receivers than they do with the running game, because I don't think their linebackers and their defensive line is all
Caden
that
Ellis
great.
is very good, very good.
Is that their starting linebacker, or Mike?
Yeah. Well, he's they're basically interchangeable. I think he's their weak side linebacker, but he's out there. He played every defensive snap. So, I haven't looked to see who wears the green dot. I assume it's him. He plays the most, so it would make the most sense. And he's a very good player. Very good player. So I wouldn't, I don't say any, is he a Roquan Smith type that's gonna be big and physical and that type of thing? No, probably not to that stage. But yeah, he's very athletic, very quick, and they rotate at the other spot. So the other spot is the issue. Troy Anderson last week and Nate Landman, who played pretty well, both of them. But again, is that more to do with Justin Fields? I don't know. But I think they're better at linebacker than people realize. Yeah. So I don't think it's going to be a run over because the Falcons have bad linebackers. I think Caden's very good, and those guys are a little bit more unproven, but they played well in week 1, at least. And they're the bigger guys. So they're the bigger, more physical guys. Anderson's like 240. So they would be the traditional Mikes, but, Caden plays every snap. So it's one of those things where he's probably got the green dot.
Let's just go to that offensive line that, for the Eagles, as we're talking about how the Eagles should attack this game offensively. You talked a little bit already about Grady Jarrett versus going up against Mekhi Becton. It'll be interesting to see how Mekhi fares against him. But we talked about Matthew Judon as well. He's a guy that could, if able, he could wreck a game, or he could, severely alter your offensive plans. I think it's going to be on Jordan Mailata to keep him out of the backfield. What do you think of that matchup?
Yeah, I like the Eagles. Same thing with the receivers. I'm always picking the Eagles when it comes to edge rushers. Even when it's Micah Parsons, I'll pick the Eagles. Not that they won't give a bunch of extra attention to Micah, but yeah, Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata, that's a luxury.
Yeah.
Not many teams have that luxury. Detroit, Minnesota, Cleveland, when they're healthy, they didn't have their starting tackles, but when Wills is there and Conklin, Minnesota's got Darisaw and O'Neal. Detroit's got Sewell and Decker, and then the Eagles. Those are the best tackle duos in the NFL. And the Eagles are probably number 1, I would say. Maybe you could argue Detroit, certainly after week 1, but and I think Penei Sewell's the best of them all. But Yeah, they're I don't worry about Matthew Judon at all.
The luxury of having Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson. The Eagles have had that for a little bit now with Lane Johnson, and now they have it with Jordan Mailata. They had it before Jordan Mailata too, with some good tackle play. But Jordan Mailata is a new level. He is still, John, an unbelievable story to think about how good he is at that position. And when he started playing this game, it's really unbelievable to think about what a great
Oh,
gifted
yeah.
athlete he is, man.
Oh, he's gifted at everything. He sings
Yeah,
like an angel.
I know.
He's got a tremendous person. Yesterday, I walked in the locker room. He's singing Hall and Oates like he's Daryl Hall.
Oh,
I
goodness.
mean, he's for old school people know who that is, but
No, I even know who that is.
tremendous voice. Yeah, everything he does, it's annoying. Everything he does, he's good at. Playing the ukulele. He picked up the ukulele. I'm
Oh, my
like, yeah, how
goodness.
long you been playing that? Oh, I just started. I'm like, it's ridiculous.
Shout out to Jordan Mailata. Good stuff, man. God, he's got gifted talents from God. So good stuff for Jordan Mailata. John, we got a super chat here. Any super chats that come here after the break, I will take as well. We have Thomas Mott, by the way, for those just checking in, coming up in hour number 2. So we'll talk to Thomas in hour number 2. Looking forward to that. Matthew Halpin checks in. Johnny Mac, giving a little love to you here this morning. Appreciate it, Matthew. He says, JM, I listen to most of the press conferences, and you ask the best and most articulate questions, in my opinion. Matthew, I'll second that, and I will agree. Johnny Mac, a little love for you on this morning. Thank you, Matthew.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I know the team appreciates it. I know they give the coaches scouting reports on the questions because some of them can get rather jaded. So I get generally good scouting reports. But yeah, I always say I try to. To me, it's not really valuable when you have coach speak coaches. Like with Vic, it's easy because you can ask Vic direct questions,
Right.
and he's going to answer it. So you can ask him, "Hey, how's the Kobe Dean playing, and how's Bryce up on?" And you get an answer. Everybody else, that's a waste of a question. I'm just being honest. It's a
No,
waste.
right. So how do you, I mean, as a reporter, as a guy that, prides themselves on the objectivity, and as Matthew points out, your articulate questioning, how do you approach like a guy like Kellen Moore, where in order
Yeah,
to get anything, you kind of have to do something a little bit different, or is it kind of chalked up to luck? He's going to play the politics. You're not going to get much.
no, you can, and that's why I try to be thematic about it more than what like this week the turnovers and the decision making was a big part of the issue is so and even when I was talking to Jalen, you frame it in a way where um, you talk about it in a general sense rather than a specific sense, and you generally are going to get a better answer. In the case of Kellen, he used to play the position, so it's kind of easy to ask about decision making, and I kind of frame it and as a former quarterback type thing. How do you handle this situation? How do you handle that situation? And you might not get the greatest answer because Kellen's smart and he knows to be political, but you generally get a better answer. And the same with Nick. If you ask, you might get I asked him about the schedules yesterday, and because it's crazy going to Brazil, then you got a mini bye, then you're on a short week,
Right.
and they don't have a real schedule until a traditional NFL schedule till week 4. And I got a pretty good answer from him. So that's what I try to do. But
John, do you think from that perspective, what you just talked about right there with the schedule, do you think the early bye week is going to help with that? Because coming out of the bye week, that's when they have really 6 straight Sunday games, 6 straight Sunday games. So 1 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 1 o'clock. Well, no, after the bye, you got 4:25, 8:20, a night game. I think it's Sunday Night Football versus the Jags, or that might be. Yeah, it's Sunday Night Football, and then 4:25 again. So you kind of can get back into your schedule coming out of the bye. You think from that perspective, the bye will help the Eagles?
I never like an early buy, no matter what, because to me the buy is more about getting a little bit of rest for the players, and you're not going to be as banged up early as you are late. That's just the nature of football. So I never like early buys. Period. end of sentence.
How about a silver lining, though, John?
Yeah, if you're looking for a silver lining, that's where I was going. Yeah, maybe. But I don't think it over the most important part of a bye is the rest for the players, and you don't need it as much this early in the season. So everybody kind of doesn't like the early bye, and the Eagles are no different. But yeah, I mean the Friday night game, and even Nick mentioned when I asked him that, he went, we've been doing that for years, blah, blah, blah. But he said, we've never gone to Brazil before. So, that was new. That was different. And he mentioned it worked out. That's all that matters. And that's true. You get out of there with a win. But yeah, these schedules have been unique and difficult. And, maybe that's a little bit of advantage of being a CEO coach that is no longer in the offensive meetings all the time. Maybe it gives him a better chance to handle that. And we'll see how it shakes out, because now you got a mini bye, and now you didn't get back with the players, and you want to correct things. And I don't even know if you know what to correct, because the field was so bad. And by the way, I talked to a bunch of players about the field yesterday. Yeah, it was Britton Covey said it was way worse than the Super Bowl. I mean, it was atrocious. Vontae called it terrible. To Bryce Huff's credit, because Bryce in the building, Bryce and everybody else on the front has been given a mulligan. Sorry, I'm going to use that term, but like everybody knows. But he didn't use it as an excuse, which I thought was a positive.
Good stuff there. We'll see how it all develops going into the rest of the season here. Week 2 coming up. Super chat here. Dallas have a tough A. Written King. I don't know what you mean. You might have hit enter by accident. Dallas has a tough schedule or a tough what? I'm going to get to a break, but I will hit your comment after if I see it coming in. Thanks, everybody, for being here this morning. Before I get to our commercial break, I want to tell you a little bit about BetUS. They have recently upgraded their promotion for all of our viewers here on JAKIB Sports. Go to betus.com.pa. Use the code YouTube150. You know what that 150 means? It's 150% now sign-up bonus, up to $2,000 in your first 3 deposits. So you can deposit less and get more now with their 150% sign-up bonus. So great stuff from BetUS. Make sure you go to BetUS. They have the fastest payouts in the industry. They have 24/7 customer support, and they will even give you your own custom account manager. So get on BetUS today. I know one of our men, I think it was Callie, I think you got on BetUS already. You asked me for the code. So you use the code YouTube150, get on BetUS. Let's start taking those prop bets on BetUS. So Saquon Barkley, I think I'm taking the over, everybody, on Saquon Barkley in week 2, which would mean another jersey is coming for our members. So thanks to all of our members in the chat. Appreciate everybody. Go to betus.com.pa. That's betus.com.pa. Birds 365 will be right back. Stay tuned, everybody.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.